Hey everyone, and welcome to your daily news breakdown for UPSC preparation. It's November 4th, 2025, and we have a ton of crucial developments to get through. So let's jump right in.
We're kicking things off with this really powerful statement from the Supreme Court. Honestly, it frames so much of our discussion today. The court has been incredibly active, and these words on digital fraud, they signal a judiciary that's getting hands-on with some of the nation's toughest challenges. So here's a quick look at our game plan for today. We'll start with the Supreme Court's big moves, then dive into the economy, the environment, and our global ties. We'll finish up with some social issues, key facts for prelims, and, of course, get you prepped with our daily mains practice. It's all structured to help you connect the dots for your exams. All right, Section 1 it is. The Supreme Court was front and center in today's news. Seriously, weighing in on everything from cybercrime to fundamental rights. Let's unpack the key decisions. You know, the scale of this problem is just staggering. Over 3,000 crore rupees. Gone. Lost to these so-called digital arrest scams, where fraudsters just impersonate officials. The Supreme Court didn't mince words, calling it a very big challenge and demanding an iron hand. Now, for your prep, this is a direct hit on GS2, cybersecurity policy, and, of course, GS3, challenges to internal security like money laundering. And in another huge case, we've got a major update from the Manipur investigation. If you look at the timeline, you can see it's been a long road. But the big news today is that the National Forensic Science Laboratory found that key audio tapes in the case were actually tampered with. This is a huge deal for understanding, the real-world application of President's Rule and the absolutely critical role that forensic science plays in these high-stakes situations. And believe me, the Supreme Court's work did not stop there today. It also agreed to take a look at the transparency of political parties, it's going to hear challenges to Rajasthan's new anti-conversion law, and it's taking up a plea about Bihar's voter revision process right in the border districts. It was a very, very busy day for the judiciary. All right, let's switch gears to Section 2. We're talking about the economy, and it's a bit of a mixed bag today. We're looking at a massive push for future innovation on one hand, and some really persistent, tough challenges in our agricultural sector on the other. The big headline here is this new 1 lakh crore rupee RDI scheme. That is a huge investment aimed at boosting our entire research ecosystem. But you know what's really fascinating? A statistic the Prime Minister brought up. Women now make up 43% of STEM enrollments in India. That's higher than the global average. This isn't just a number. It points to a much broader talent pool for innovation. The whole scheme is a perfect example for GS3 when you're talking about new investment models and inclusive growth. But, while we're looking to the future, the present has its own headaches, especially in agriculture. On one side, you have the PMFBY crop insurance scheme, and it's taking heat because some farmers are getting payouts as low as 1 rupee. It's just shocking. And then on the other side, Madhya Pradesh wants out of the decentralized procurement scheme, saying it's just too much of a financial strain. Both of these stories, they really peel back the curtain on some deep structural problems in our farm policies, touching everything from subsidies to the PDS. Okay, moving on to Section 3, let's talk about the environment. And what we're seeing today is that classic, familiar clash between pollution, what the courts are trying to do, and the constant pressures of development. I mean, just look at this chart. It paints a really grim picture of Delhi's air quality. The target for good air is an AQI of 50. The city's average on Monday? 309. It hasn't had a single good air day in over 2 years. So now, the Supreme Court has stepped in, telling the Commission for Air Quality Management to get an action plan together pronto. This is a classic case of environmental pollution turning into a full-blown governance crisis. The court also took up the issue of stray dog management, reinforcing the official Animal Birth Control, or ABC model. This is the humane approach. Catch, neuter, vaccinate, and release. But apparently, it's being undermined by some government employees, which is why the court has to get involved. It's a really clear-cut example of judicial activism trying to make sure welfare policies are actually followed on the ground. And finally in this section, we have 2 stories on land use that are in stark contrast with each other. In Delhi, the Supreme Court is forcing the DDA to plant over 160,000 saplings to make up for illegal tree felling. But then, way down in the Great Nicobar Islands, the administration is pushing ahead with plans to de-notify tribal reserve land for a massive infrastructure project. This right here perfectly captures that central tension between conservation and development. Okay, on to Section 4. Here, we're zooming out to look at India's strategic moves on the global stage. We'll be focusing on critical technology, some tricky trade negotiations, and key diplomatic meetings. So let's unpack two really crucial long-term goals. First, there's a big push to reduce our dependence on China. How? By encouraging R&D in tech for the auto sector that doesn't need rare earth magnets. This is all about economic security and indigenization. Second, we're trying to move forward on the free trade agreement with the EU, but we have to navigate their Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, which is basically a carbon tax at the border. India sees it as a form of green protectionism. These are exactly the kind of complex issues you see in international relations and economic policy. And wow, it has been a whirlwind day for diplomacy. We've got ongoing trade talks with Bahrain and New Zealand, high-level visits, like Israel's foreign minister meeting with our EAM. And then on the crisis front, India is engaged with Sudan over an abduction, and we're also dealing with a major commercial dispute with Bangladesh that's now headed for international arbitration. This just gives you a snapshot of the sheer breadth of our foreign policy in action on any given day. All right, let's bring our focus back home for Section 5. We're going to cover some key social challenges, a really interesting ethical dilemma in science, and then we'll wrap up with some must-know facts for your prelims. Let's break down three very different domestic issues. First up, in Bihar, continuous recruitment delays because of paper leaks are causing major frustration among the youth. That's a classic human resources challenge. At the central level, a new program monitoring unit, staffed by young professionals, is being set up to better evaluate our social justice schemes. And finally, in the tech world, there's an ethical storm brewing over AI companies using scientific research to make money without giving creators any control. This is a perfect case study for GS4 on corporate governance and ethics. Now get your notebooks ready for some rapid-fire facts for your prelims notes. UPI transactions, they hit a brand new record high in October. Our R&D spending, still pretty low, sitting at about 0.6 to 0.7% of GDP. Our bioeconomy is projected to hit a massive $300 billion by 2030. Urea imports have doubled in the last few months, and 35 Indian fishermen were arrested by the Sri Lankan Navy. Keep these data points handy. And that brings us to our final and arguably most important section, taking what we've just learned and putting it into practice. We've got 4 questions for your mains practice, all pulled directly from today's news. First up, a question that takes us right back to where we started. I want you to really think about the social, the economic, and the psychological impact of these digital arrest scams. Then structure a really solid answer that covers policy, tech, and legal solutions. Next, let's connect the dots on those 2 agricultural stories we talked about. What do the problems with the PMFBY payouts and Madhya Pradesh's exit from the DCP scheme tell us about the deeper, structural issues in our agricultural support systems? What needs to change? Our third question today is on the environment. Use that Delhi greening order as a case study to really evaluate the role of the judiciary. From there, broaden your answer to discuss that fundamental conflict between our drive for urbanization and the need for ecological protection. And finally, a real thinker on international relations. What exactly is green protectionism? I want you to analyze the EU's CBAM, but specifically from the perspective of a developing country like India. What's the real impact on equity and global trade? A fantastic question to chew on. Keep thinking and keep writing. We'll see you next time.